Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Resinate podcast. It is the pajama solstice, as I like to call it. And it is way past my bedtime, so I'm going to get kind of goofy. And today's topic is brought to us by candlelight. This is awesome. Check this out. This is two of these candle holders. I accidentally hit them together, and this is what it sounded like. What a pleasant surprise. One more. Just a wonderful accident. Love the tone. Love the twin pillars. Love the natural light. Just feeling really cozy here for this topic. The topic is evergreens. And I want to cover the myth, the medicine, the subject of evergreens, and then get into some of these specific plants like pine, like spruce, like holly, like the yew plant, and just keep going and going. The reason why is because once a month I have this group that I invite to my herb shop. And it's called Herb Club. It's kind of like book club, but instead of being nerds and reading books, we're being nerds and talking about plants. And it's pretty cool. I like getting the people together that like talking about plants, and certainly like getting people that like listening to me talking about plants, but I try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible and let the group just kind of like, take over. And it's really hard. It's really hard to keep my mouth shut about stuff that I really like to talk about, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to cover that I didn't get a chance to cover in the Herb Club. And, it was also kind of like way too nerdy, pretty deep. And I thought, you know what? This would be a really great way to just bring a loaded mag and just unload it here. So I think y'all are into it, right? You're into the evergreens? Okay, evergreens. That's what's green right now in the Northern Hemisphere. Chances are, if you go outside, it's dark. And the reason why is because there's way more time of the day where the sun is below the horizon. And it's cold. And the thing that is showing us as a symbol of perpetual life and hope for life to continue and grow back again are these plants that keep their leaves, keep their green. And green is a very interesting color too, isn't it? So the symbolism of the evergreens that we see, the pine trees, the Christmas trees that we bring inside, or all of the holly that we're decking our halls with, that is on one layer symbolic of how it's always giving. It's always giving life force energy. Certainly it also has this like born again or immortal connection as well. There's another thing too that I was thinking of, is that I put this on my Instagram, which is how to make a cosmologically accurate Christmas tree. Okay, so you bring the Christmas tree into your home. Now the question is, which way do you string the lights? My answer to the question is, you string the lights counterclockwise, because the tree itself represents the central axis. It represents the axis mundi, or the tree of life. It is the center of your world. It's the center. Okay? So at the top of the tree, you adorn it with a star. No, that's the North Star. That's the pole star. That's the star that everything is revolving around. Okay? So therefore, your lights that are going on the tree represent the stars. The tree itself, it's dark, it's green, it's wild. That's the wilderness. That's space. That's out there, That's the layer of St. John the Baptist. Who knows? Way out past, the Eridanus River. I'm talking about putting them around counterclockwise, because the stars rotate around Polaris from our point of view, which is the only one that really matters. Because we are the center. We are each our own center of our own experience, are we not? Don't ever let anyone try to convince you otherwise. That's kind of one of the funny psyops that we all might remember from our childhood. Our parents saying, "What do you think, that the world revolves around you?" Well, you know what? It's kind of hard to argue that it doesn't, not from my point of view, at least. I'm not being solipsistic. I'm just saying that's the way that I see it. Anyway, the stars all revolve. This is the macrocosm now. They're all going counterclockwise. Okay, but so that's the way to cosmologically accurately wrap the lights around your Christmas tree, because the Christmas tree represents the center, it represents the pole, it represents the fixed place where we're gathering towards in the winter. And the winter itself is like the condensation of energy inwards. Cold itself is the energy of cold falls. It's depressing. It sinks. It goes in and down. Right? We've all experienced this, being in a room and feeling the heat rise and the cold sink. Maybe you've tasted something bitter. That's the flavor of bitters too. It brings it. I always think of bitters as like having this centripetal movement from like the etheric down to into the stillness, the central channel. But some people are like, yeah, but Christmas, it's all about solar deities. It's all about the return of the sun. It's a solstice. It's the solar. Okay. Birth of the Son of God. Okay. I can see that. Then, if that's what you're doing, if that's what you're celebrating, then wrap them. Then you might as well be cosmologically accurate with your Christmas tree and wrap them clockwise. Why? Because the sun goes clockwise around the sky for the northern hemisphere. By the way, what are the southern hemisphere people doing with a Christmas tree? What do they get? Like, what do they get a Christmas tree for? We're talking about northern hemisphere people only here. Okay. I'm sure there's evergreens that grow in the southern hemisphere, but it doesn't make sense to me. And this is just a joke, by the way. Okay. So now that we got that out of the way, what the Christmas tree is, what bringing it into the house actually represents. Is it solar? Is it polar? You decide, northern hemisphere person. And only you. Okay. Then we also have evergreen. Here's one that I think is really interesting. Green is the color of envy. You ever heard that? This goes back to ancient Greek, where they talked about that as like bile obstruction, literally bile obstruction, because if your gallbladder is all obstructed, then you're a coward, you're a yellow belly, you're green, the color of envy. And that's not what I think of, though. I'm actually thinking of one of my, shout out to Slick Dissident, a friend of mine and the mentor, just a great mentor of all things synchromystic, but certainly the Enneagram. And in the Enneagram, station number 4, the 4th station is the individual, and the shadow of the 4 is envy. Now, I've thought about this a lot, because I don't think that the envy that the individualist displays is the same as jealousy, which is jealousy would be like, let's just say like somebody took something that I liked and somebody had something that I wanted, and I wanted to be like, I wanted that too. Wait, let me start over. Let me say this again. The envy from the perspective of the individualist is feeling left out from actually having what other people have, the experiences that other people have. But they're not jealous of those people themselves. So that's the nature of the individual. It's like, I don't belong. I don't belong. And I think it's really interesting because we have a verb for this that's related to the evergreens. It's not the same word, but it is. And that word that describes a persistent longing, an intense desire, and at the cost of one's own vitality, wasting away, is pining. I'm pining. Oh, you heard the old blues guys are always pining for for whatever it is that they want, right? Their vision, their sight, their booze, their woman, their job, whatever. They're always pining and wasting away and whining, quite frankly. No, it's good. It's good. It's good music, right? It's important. It's important to sing. But that word pining, the verb, is related to the word pain. Pain and pine. It comes from a Germanic origin, poin, and it's also goes back into Latin to penalty and punishment. Those are all related to this verb pining. And at one point in the word, the history of the word, it was more causative, like causing penalty, causing pain. And then it became more enduring. Like, I'm enduring this pain, I'm enduring this suffering. And man, it just like thinking about that with the Enneagram on your mind and going from the 1 station, causing pain, the wrath of the penalty, down to the 4 and feeling left out and just enduring it, wasting away, way down there, way down there at the bottom of the Enneagram. It's really interesting. So I hope I explained that well, but like I said, it is way after my bedtime. And I got to give mad props to the content creators with kids out there, because finding time to shine in the candlelight, sometimes you just gotta go for it. This came up in the class. I thought this is something I overlooked, thinking about evergreens. The wreath. Yeah. There we go again. The wreath, going back up to the number 1. The wrath of the perfectionist. The wreath also being tying that in with the circular symbolism of the year, right? Here we are, the wheel of the year. And is it just beginning again, solar cycle? Is it ending? Is it halfway through? That's the fun thing about the wheel, is that you can just be at any perspective of the wheel, and it can be any of those things, right? The wheel just turns. And so that's what I love about the wreath. There's this cyclical nature of birth, death, life, rebirth, and bringing life, bringing death, and honoring that, hanging that as like almost a memento mori, and memento natale, memento natale in your home as well. Yeah, the natale is also the word for Christmas in Italian. The natal. Buon Natale. Okay. Some evergreens. So one of the things that's really interesting about evergreens, specifically coniferous evergreens, like the spruce, the fir, the pine, the cedar, they have pretty much interchangeable medicines in many ways, in that their medicines are oftentimes specific to the respiratory system, the circulatory system, and the nervous system. And I don't know a lot of herbalists that work with these herbs for the nervous system, but I do. And that's because I think of them symbolically depicting our center, the place where we might be scattered from, and having these trees medicine call it back to the center. I'll tell you what, my Christmas tree lights are wrapped counterclockwise. That's what I'm telling you. So let me just tell you a little bit about the spruce. And then, I might be repeating myself too many times if I just keep going on with the medicine of the spruce and the medicine of the pine and the medicine of the fir. And instead, I'll just say that the medicines that are similar in all of these, a lot of them come from the resin. So the spruce, the botanical name of the genus of spruce is Picea. And Picea means pitch. That's this tree scabs. That's what they are. Branch fell off. Oh, we lost another one, eh? Oh, shoot. Well, what are you going to do? I'm just going to put some tree blood up in there, and then I'll let it scab. And then when it gets like nice and scabby, then it's going to start to drop down to the forest floor, and people can probably like pick that up and take it and do whatever they want with it. But that's what this pitch is. And spruces happen to be very, very pitchy, super pitchy. Interesting that we use that word pitch, because that also relates to musical frequency. And one of the things that I love about the spruce is the Norwegian spruce, the very fabled Norwegian spruce that Stradivarius sought to build his violins. So some of the finest instruments that the world has ever known were made by, what was his first name? Leo, I think, Stradivarius. And it was an Italian luthier. And I don't know if that's the right word for violin maker, but I would say string instrument maker. Okay. So legend has it that he goes up into this valley that's in the Dolomite region in Trentino, which is probably not far from where the 2026 Olympics are going to be. And also not far from where our guy, Otzi the Iceman, Otzi, as they call him in that local region, Otzi, in Bolzano. And so, cool place, right? Lots of history. There's mummified, shaman that are up there. And there's these crazy trees that have to make the best instruments. So what's going on with this area? Well, who knows what happened with history? Who knows what time period is what? Some people say, things happened over millions of years. Other people think, differently. But let's just say that at one point in time, and not long ago, there was some sort of cataclysmic mini ice age type thing where the who knows what happened, right? Did the sun switch its position or magnetic qualities or whatever? But the winter got super, super, super long for a long time. But these spruce trees are really adapted to winter. So one of the things that I notice about spruce trees is that they're really acute angles. They have this like really, really sharp angles. I remember I used to live up in Superior, Duluth area. And when I would come back to that area, or, I'd be driving out of town, I would know I'd be coming back into my home because I would start to see the forest landscape shift from like the bigger, more broad conifers like the pines, the white pines, and the red pines. And then all of a sudden the angles start to get really, really sharp and really acute, pointy. And the reason why is because it can deflect more snow. So like you have a ton of snow, lake effect snow. And that's just something that's just one of my favorite things about the spruce tree is this vision I have of driving up Highway 53 and seeing the spruce off into the distance in the marshy lakes. And so you can imagine up in the mountainous regions in northern Italy, in this like places where people don't go, and these forests are able to endure for a long time, and they're compressed by winter. They're just going to have super, super, super dense rings. So every year that they grow, they're going to have that ring around it, but it might only be a very micro, millimeter for hundreds of years. It could just be like a couple of millimeters. And so if you're a tree and you're making a ton of pitch, another word for that is resin. And if you are a violin maker and you're looking for the right wood, that is reason. It's your reason to be there. And once you make that sound, then it becomes resonant. So you have the resonating, resonating, like the song again, and the reasoning behind the singing spruce. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm sure that. So some legends were like, he would go up to, he would put his ear next to a tree and he would knock and he would hit it and be like, and he would be able to hear it resonating. Stradivarius guy, hear it resonating through the tree. And I believe that because I've heard trees filled with pitch before, and they do have a tone to them. It's really cool. So the pitch, it's in the spruce. You can use that as gum too. That's really fun. And whenever there's pitch, there's terpenes. So the terpenes that are in, and this is a really interesting thing about the climate as well, is that the terpenes change and adjust the microclimate and the clouds as well as the climate within our own body. So the word terpenes is also where we get the word turpentine. And that would be a distillation of the pitch from these types of trees. The turpentine that's really popular in commerce is not what I'm talking about. That's the stuff that's crappy stuff that's in a can that you find at Home Depot. Where I'm talking about 100% distilled pure gum spirits of the plant, of the tree. So what is that substance? What is it doing? It is it dissolves oil-soluble chemicals. So you've got some paint on your brush, put a little bit of turpentine on it, it goes away. What if you have some oil-soluble toxicity within your body or on the top or on the skin, things like that? There's all types of research and rabbit holes to go into when it comes to turpentine. But in addition to it being something that is beneficial, just like the pine, as a textile, as there's many ways of utilizing the properties of turpentine around in the home. Just like pine or spruce, there's also medicinal qualities to this as well. One medicine that still is able to use or still uses turpentine to this day is Vicks Vapor Rub. Vicks Vapor Rub uses turpentine from the distilled pine. And so here we have a connection between the pine trees, ever giving, always giving oxygen, always giving breath, and the signatures that has for the respiratory faculties of the earth, and now within our own microclimate, our own respiratory system. There's probably nothing better than I could think of for breaking up stagnant, damp, cold types of conditions within the respiratory system than a steam infusion, or suffumigation is the word I was looking for, of conifers. So really popular in Europe still. You get a head cold, you get some congestion in your sinuses, you get some white bronchial mucus and just things just globular. It's not coming out very well. You get a pot, fill it up with some water, get good water, get the spring water. Okay, you can't get spring water. But you know, you don't have to be ideal about it, but it's always good to have the best water that you can get. Over there, Leo Stradivarius is just taking the glacier melt off of Otzi's, in between Otzi's toes, that guy. And so anyway, you're filling it up with the water. Put some cedar tips in there. You put some pine cones. You can use orange peels. You can use rosemary. You can use sage. You can use anything that you could smell. And you bring it to a boil, put the cover on so it gets nice and steamy. Set yourself up, put the pot on the table, put a towel over your head, and open up the pot just so gently at first, because it's like going into a hot tub. You don't want to do a cannonball into a hot tub. You just want to put your toes in a little bit, take them out, put your toes in a little bit, and the same thing. So you take it off the top, take it on, all while you're under the tent, and it's just lovely. It's amazing little personal spa. The things that come out, the things that come out in there that you never have to share with the world. Okay, so yeah, moving on. Let's see here. Pine. Okay, pine. So pine, like a lot of these conifers, is, or I should say, like all conifers, has a very masculine presence. Really, it really does. But I think nothing embodies the masculine presence in the plant world better than the pine. The pine is the best. And the ancients knew this, and they took the symbols of the pine and they recognized that. So as a symbol of male fecundity, as a symbol of the virility of the masculine or positive potential. And when I say positive potential, I mean everybody's got a positive and a negative pole. Everybody does. Okay? Men have expressed more of that masculine positivity, and women have more of an expression of the feminine negative polarity. But we all have within ourselves a positive and a negative polarity. So find this polarity within you. And for a lot of people, when I work with pine, I work with the axis of this polarity that's out of balance is in the sacral area. So anyway, I'm saying this because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to shut down now. We're talking about male tonics, or we're talking about masculine or whatever. And I'm talking about positivity. I'm talking about this direction of going up and out. And do you have that direction within you? Do you need that direction with you to point somewhere and go, and without deviating and going this way and going that way like the oak tree does? No, I'm talking about going, I'm going to go up to heaven, right up to the sky, to Father Sky. Okay, so in the ancient cultures, the ancient peoples knew this, and they said, like people like the cult of Bacchus. You know what they carried? They had this staff that they carried called a thyrsus, and the thyrsus had on top of it a pine cone right on top. So Bacchus was all about peace, love, and rock and roll, right? The Bacchanalian frenzies, counterculture, as my friend Rhea says, the Bacchanalian orgies was all about that. So even the thyrsus itself, I should do a whole episode on that, because we've got there's 3 really mythic plants within that thing itself. So Bacchus, and then Pan took it to be sacred too. So obviously Pan, because Pan is the same word as pine. Some people are like, if you haven't recognized this, vowels, another way of saying vowels is flowels. You could just flow them. Vowels can flow. They can go, you can drop them, you could turn from one vowel to another. Pan, pine, pine. You can hear that in all, and even in like southern dialect. Pine, pan. So pan, obvious for fertility, and obvious name for pine. Here's another one. Poseidon. Poseidon has in it also the anagram for pine. Let's see. If we took the the pine out of Poseidon, what are we left with? O S D. I was trying to figure out how we could conjure the next one I was thinking of, which is Osiris. OSD. But Osiris, yeah. Osiris is missing his pine. And Bacchus, which I mentioned. So all of these have a relationship with the male fecundity, male vitality, pine, and even the genus of the name of the plant, pine, is Pinus. In America, we say pinus because we're trying to be polite, maybe. We're the descendants of Puritans, or we just don't know how to say it right. We don't know how to say the I in Latin, which is pronounced E. It's pinus. Penis. That's how you say the pine. Okay. Pine is ruled by Mars. A lot of astrologers will say it's ruled by Mars. I would probably agree in a sense. I kind of like pine not being ruled by any planets really. I kind of like pine having a symbolic relationship to the center, or to like the North Pole, or to like that central axis that all the sky kind of like moves around. But if anybody's ever lit a Christmas tree on fire or a pine tree, or been in a situation where a pine is on fire, or they're living in a pine forest, I've seen it on YouTube. Or you have a chimney. What don't you put in your fireplace? You don't put conifers. You don't put pine. Why not? Because it burns super hot and it makes the creosote, it gunks up the fireplace, and it's potentially very dangerous. Just very Marsy like. So there you go again. Boyoyoing. That's a masculine sound right there. Then we have the interesting thing I have here on a note: emblem affixed to poles in the Italian cultures, or around the gates of Italy and around the fences, and even in like decorative shops that are looking at Italian culture and that's left over here. You'll find pine cones that are fixed atop of a pole or the fence, and it's said that is to ward off the evil eye. Don't you look at me. I got my pine cone. I think that might be a remnant from Bacchus days too. But I also think that's really interesting because the evil eye, pine cone is shaped like the pineal gland. That's how the third eye gland gets its name. Pineal gland, because of its shape. Actually, I'm wondering which one came first. I actually think that in the causal realm that they both existed at the same time, and that's why it's shaped that way. To be honest, but which one was discovered first? It was probably the pine cone. No, it probably wasn't. It was probably the pineal gland that was discovered first. I'm just imagining Adam sitting cross-legged in the garden, examining himself first before he opens his eyes. And anyway, so the connection once again with there's the place that we see, but it's also central. And so the Sagittarius, I'm going to say Sagittarius here because we're going for, like, you bring your pine trees into your house during jolly Sagittarius season. When is that? It's from the big old jolly feast of Thanksgiving all the way to the other jolly feast of Christmas and all that merry, holly jolly time in between. And the pine tree itself even looks like the sigil of Sagittarius, the arrow that's pointed up. And Sagittarius rules vision. It rules our ability to see ahead and see forward in time. And so does the third eye. This is why the benevolent kings are said to wear their crown over their third eye, the Jupiterian spot of the body, whereas like the evil kings wear their crown over their crown, like that little crown. That's the Saturnian spot of the body. Okay. Here's something cool I learned about the pine. It's a weather oracle. Did you know that? Back in time, people had homes that probably weren't hermetically sealed to the environment like ours are now. They would bring pine cones inside, and if the pine cone closed up, it meant cold, damp weather was coming. And if it opened up, it meant hot, dry weather was coming. Oh, it's so interesting, right? What were they thinking? They could have just went to their black scrying mirror and found the future for the next 7 days. No, it was much more interesting back then. And here's a couple other things I was thinking. Animal totems. The animal totem, one of the animal totems for the pine, especially the white pine. And y'all will know this. If you ever been by the lake, come up north. Come sit by a lake one of these days and look at the biggest, most badass pine tree on that lake that you could find. And guess what's going to be up there? A bald eagle. That's right. Eagle medicine. Now, eagles are also sacred to Zeus, Jupiter, Sagittarius, all that stuff. So, and there, again, you have the connection with vision. Here's something I put together on my own too. That the root of the word for vision, for seeing, for the eyes, is also connected to the same word as eagle. It went back to so-called Proto-Indo-European, which is, the Latin word for eyes is occhio. And prior to that, it was oggio. And then, so you can hear eagle in there, right? Oggio. And then after occhio, it went ok. That's hawk. Hawk and eagle and eye are the same freaking word. Oh, so awesome. So cool. When you see the pattern. Love it. It just the things just open up when you get the philological lockpicks in. Okay. So that's one totemic animal. Here's another one. I want you to guess this one. See if you can guess it. This animal has the word pine in it. What animal has the word pine? Okay. Now pretend that you're a Saxon or an Anglo, one of those two, and you are describing a pine pig. Pine pig. What did you just say? If you're describing a pine pig? Porcupine. No, porcupine, that doesn't mean pine pig. It means spine pig, Kyle. Spine pigs. Yeah. Porcuspino. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, because it's got spines and it looks like a little pig, I guess. But spines are also an anagram for pine. Pines. When you put your spine on the back of a pine, it really does bring you to your center, which is your spine. Your sushumna is your spine, and that's where the center of your universe is. And so yes, porcupines are spine pigs. But you know what They love to eat the pine more than anything else. They love to eat the pine tree. They're eating the bark, they're eating the resin, they're eating the needles, they're eating the cones, they're eating the nuts out of the cones. They're just as much pine pigs as they are spine pigs. And ain't it funny? And it's kind of like you are what you eat. And if you are eating a bunch of spiny trees, you probably also become a spiny pig. So what came first, right? So here's something I heard that I thought it was so cool and fun, and I totally want to try this. Okay, because the porcupines are eating all just pines. They're just pine pigs. That's all they do is pig out on pines all day long. One's got to find where their den is. So they got a little burrow. It's kind of in the pines there. And you go down to the burrow, and wait till the porcupine's gone and done its thing. And what are you looking for down there now? It's poop. You're looking for its poop. It's little balls of poop. You know why? Because it's the perfect incense. That's why. It's just pine. It's just pine resin mixed with whatever, poop stuff that rolls it up into the perfect ball. Just put that onto your charcoal. You'll probably just ignite it without having to put it on a charcoal. I think that's brilliant. It probably smells so good. I think that's brilliant because I love making pine resin incense. It's one of my favorite things to do. I just got done making some with my son as a gift for one of my mentors. And so we harvested some really scabby, dry, scabby pine resin. And so this one I could crack up with a mortar and pestle pretty good. Crack it up, mix it with some mako bark. I mixed it with a little bit of lichens, oak moss, things like that. And some angelica. Oh my gosh, it's so good. But typically when I'm making pine resin incense, it gets sticky, and the best way to do it is to put it into the freezer for a couple hours, let it get frozen, pull it out. You got your mortar and your pestle. You can grind it up. It usually will only grind for about 15 seconds before it's too gooey again. And then you just put it back in the freezer for a couple hours. When I do this process, I don't just leave it back in the freezer for a couple hours. I don't remember to come back for like another day or two. It could take me weeks. It could take me weeks to process pine resin into something that I can roll for incense. And that's fine. That's totally fine because you know what? House is a temple. My body's a temple. Everything that I do is sacred. I might as well. But I also might as well go get some porcupine poop and put that on my burner too, because that sounds really badass and fun. As I was thinking there too about the male fecundity and the virility and where you would find the porcupines would be, isn't it really interesting that they're called the pine barrens? Huh. What's up with that? Let's see here. Can I share screen? Okay, so this is called the Flag of New England. And you can see this has got the eastern white pine on it. Pinus strobus. Okay, Pinus strobus. Pinus strocus. And the most common prominent symbol of New England, and is featured on. So this is another one called that features St. George's Cross, and this other one with the blue background is called. I've heard it called the Flag of Bunker Hill. So some of these are flags from like the American Revolution, times like that. Okay. So I want to show you another one here. This is one of the original flags of America. This is called the Appeal to Heaven flag, or the flag of the American Revolution. So that's it. It's just a white background with a white pine on it that says an appeal to heaven. I love this. I love this so much. Here's a quote from John Locke. And where the body of the people, by the way, body and people are capitalized here. and where the body of the people or any single man is deprived of their right, or is under the exercise of a power without right, and have no appeal on earth, there they have a liberty to appeal to heaven whenever they judge the cause of sufficient moment. I kind of butchered that in there. So they have an appeal. When they lose their appeal, they have no appeal on earth. There they have a liberty to appeal to heaven whenever they judge the cause of sufficient moment. Okay, there's so much in this quote that I really want to play on right now. First of all, very cool that we have pine symbolism in the vision of, whatever founding fathers or revolutionary ideas, these types of things. And also the pine as a representative, as an appeal to heaven. Heaven is the masculine polarity. Up there, the higher you go, the more you heave up, the more positive things are. The closer you come, the further down below you go, the more negative they are. Right here on the surface of the earth, where we are meeting heaven and earth, there is a neutral. This is why I'm going to show you some cool merch in a second. But anyway, all right, so basically what John Locke is saying here is that first of all, what's justice? How much justice? Justice is an immaterial thing. All right. So you automatically, whenever anybody is appealing to the word justice, rights, or anything like that, we're talking about something metaphysical. People who are just a bunch of atoms that are smashed together randomly in a cold, vacuumless, vacuum universe. There's no such thing as justice. It's a metaphysical thing. Okay. If you got to weigh it, if it's got to be scrutinized under the scientific method, good luck. You ain't never going to find how much weight justice has unless you take it out to the realm of heaven. So first, what he's saying here, which I think is really interesting, I wonder if he was imprisoned when he said this. He said, and where the body of the people or any single man is deprived of their right or is under the exercise of a power without right. So you got screwed. You got deprived of your rights. By the way, those things are also metaphysical. Okay. Those come from some place other than man. And have no appeal on earth. Okay. So in other words, you're trying to appeal to something here physically, a man, and you're not receiving that, then you go to heaven. Okay. What are you talking about, John Locke? Why not just go to heaven in the first place? What are you talking about with this special appeal courts bullshit? What's he saying? No, first you have to exercise this, then go to the appeal on earth. You have to appeal on earth. What are you talking about? What are we appealing? It doesn't make any sense to appeal any of this stuff on earth, John Locke. Maybe I'm just reading this wrong. Okay. I definitely did butcher it, but no. Brother, all this, you always appeal to heaven straight away. That's it. That's your only appeal. That's your only jurisdiction. There's no appeal on earth. Okay. That's my take on that. Check this one out. You thought that American flag, revolution flag was cool. Wait till you see the looks you get in this organic cotton t-shirt from Tippecanoe Herbs. This is organic cotton, by the way. You don't want any of that plastic. You don't want any of that, any of those mixed fibers, do you? No. Father in heaven would not be pleased with your mixed fibers. It says, an appeal to Father Sky. So I'm changing heaven to Father Sky, an appeal to Mother Earth. Now this is an alchemical process right here. Father Sky, Mother Earth. What do you get in the middle? You get the third. You get the baby. We got all the sizes for you. You got a couple of different sizes, a couple of different colors here. Limited batch. They're going fast. No, they're not. They're not going fast. But once they're done, they're done. Okay. So just quick commercial break for that. All right. So I think that's really interesting. Here's another thing I want to show you here too. And this is an article that is talking about what kind of wood was the cross of Christ made of. And it's you know what I think is really cool, because obviously there's no cross that nobody can go take a splinter and just examine it and be like, oh, this is pine. This was a maritime pine. This was the cedar of Lebanon. It's all symbolic, and that's all that matters. I think that's all that matters. It's all the story. It's really the only thing that's important here, because that's where really the medicine is. It's about our stories. It's about our beliefs. And when we can bring these herbs and these plant medicines and interact with our own beliefs this way, there's a lot of medicine available. So on some accounts, it says that, okay, so one of the stories was like Adam, he's dying. His son Seth is like he's like, I gotta go to St. Michael. I gotta go to the Garden of Eden and see if I can get some medicine from him. And St. Michael at the Garden of Eden is like, nope, can't come in. And so he's like, dang it. Well, can I have anything? And so St. Michael gives him the oil. He gives Seth the oil of the tree. And some accounts gives him 3 seeds from the tree. And when he gets back, Adam's dead. Dang it. Totally missed it. Okay, well, let's just put this oil, or let's just give him this branch on some accounts, or put these 3 seeds in his, where he's buried, and then outgrows a tree or 3. And from one tree or one, trunk, 3 trees. And so this is symbolic of the Trinity. This is symbolic of, and the Trinity can be many things too. It can be all the tripartite nature of reality that brings things together. Okay, it doesn't have to be Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but that's certainly one. Mother, Maiden, Crone, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. So from this tree, okay, what are the 3 separate woods? We have cedar, that's an evergreen. Cypress, that's an evergreen, and pine. From this tree, Moses cut his rod. Okay, that's cool. That makes it also badass, because that's where Moses did a lot of fun alchemical experiments, making water gush from the boulders and turning it into snakes and eating other snakes with his rod. It was transplanted by David to the borders of a pool near Jerusalem, and Solomon had it cut from the temple as a column from the temple, and it was short. And one of the stories is that it was always short. They measured it once, they measured it twice, and they cut it, and it kept being shorter, and then they tried to do it something else, and it just always ended up being too short, and so they just rejected it. And it was just cast over a stream. It served as a bridge, and then something flooded. And then eventually one day, it was just, floating on the surface. And the Jews took it and made the main beam of the cross. This was part of the tree. Okay. So there's also maybe in here, not just those 3 trees, but the wood that was used to make the plaque at the top of the crucifix was also olive. So really interesting. I just love the symbolism of that more than anything else. Okay, so speaking of symbolism, in the Vatican, there's a gigantic pine cone statue in the middle of the Vatican. And in the Divine Comedy, Dante describes, he goes down into the purgatory, and he describes the head of Nimrod, who is like a gigantic being, as being as big as the pine cone of St. Peter's Square. He said, his face appeared to me as long and as large as at Rome, at the pine cone of St. Peter's. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. The old, let's see, we talked about flags. What of the cross? Is there anything else I want to talk about here? Yeah. Pine pollen. That's something that's in okay, going back to the masculine potential and male virility. This is all in the sphere of, biohacking and everything like that. You got to get the male testosterone that comes from the plants. It's pine pollen. Okay. There's definitely something to it, though. I'll tell you, because when you see pine pollen in the windy times of May, it's only available for like a couple of days, and I usually miss it every year because it's so windy in this time, and I can't collect it. I finally got it this year for the first time in 4 years. I mean, this past season. But it is like the pine is just a huge cloud of of its pollen, which is like, tree sperm, basically, all over everything, all over the cars, all over the windows. It's just in the air. Everyone's sneezing. And it really does have that feel to it. So when these things kind of like, go viral and people find out about them, they'll always come to the shop and ask about the latest viral herb. Lately, the latest viral herb is haritaki. So go figure. Every day I get a call about haritaki. What are you talking about? Where are you getting this information? TikTok, man. Okay. I'm like, I have Triphala. I don't have haritaki, though. I don't just have haritaki. I wish I did right now, because I'd be making a lot. I'd be making like $2.50 more a day. It's not that expensive. But the pine pollen, when these things become viral, then the men who want to improve their virile qualities will come in. And I think it's always worth a discussion first whenever it comes to fertility, and even like couples fertility, to include the man and be like, you got to give up the pornography. you got to give up the pornography, brother. This pine pollen is not going to do anything for you. You got to learn how to channel your inner strength. And this is where it comes into the medicine that I find in the polarity of the sacral. The sacral area of the body, when I'm doing tunings, the sacral area corresponds to our self-worth. And when it's out of balance, there can be a lot of feeling of guilt and shame. And guilt and shame, depletes and decimates self-worth. Self-worth, the sacral, also, this is like the Libra area of the body. So we have our relationships, how we're relating to others. We have where we find satisfaction, where we find gratitude, where we find flow, and also, pleasure, our worth. I'm worthy. Well, what if there's something that got mixed up in somebody, or continues to get mixed up in somebody, that makes them feel shameful about themselves and makes them feel guilty about their actions? Can you see how that would have an effect on the generative quality, the creative qualities that are in our sacral, the fertile qualities that are within our sacral? So pine can be a really, really wonderful ally to help assist someone in overcoming the habit of that which is creating guilt or shame, or letting go of the program that I have to feel guilty, I have to feel shameful. And once, those corrections are made, of course, and restoring that vitality instead of just thinking about it allopathically and reductionistically, like I want something that's going to override my shame and guilt, and also, not allow, make it so that I have to change my habits or do anything else. Still improve my fertility and my ability to be intimate. And so that's what pine pollen is really, a lot of it's in the blog sphere, but I really want to put that nuance in there because I think it's way more than just the androgenic components that are in the pollen itself. I think it's the spirit of the plant, and it is Dr. Bach's flower essence that says that pine. We should just read it here. Bach flower essence pine. Let's see what he says. Perfect. The Bach, move my video out of the way. The Bach flower remedy encourages the positive potential, I've said that a million times now, to accept and respect yourself as you would others for times when you feel full of guilt and blame yourself for anything that goes wrong. I just want to show you. I'm on the Bach flower essence screen here. So that's the Bach pine remedy. And that's what I usually invoke pine for, is for guilt and shame, sacral balancing of this masculine right side that's either completely depleted or out of hand, like just leading the charge and completely depleting the feminine polarity. So that's pine. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, let's move on. We'll go to... Should we talk about anything else? I mean, what did we cover? Did we cover turpentine with spruce? Yes. We've basically covered respiratory issues. We're covering, there's some other pine medicine that we can talk about too. Like, one of them is how pine needles are really helpful medicine against scurvy. And so some people will say, oh, that's because pine is high in vitamin C. And so you have to believe first that the 27 or 28 laboratory components that they use to take a pine needle and apply acids and apply washes and apply all of these radiative type of things to it come out, and the thing that comes out is called ascorbic acid, and they say that is the same thing as vitamin C. What I like to think is in terms of qualitative rather than this quantitative thing called vitamin C, which is really pseudoscientific, absolutely pseudoscientific, and totally fallacious. If you look into how vitamins, what the provenance of what vitamin C is, or what they claim it is. Instead, I like the word antiscorbutic. That is the action, antiscorbutic. It's such a cool Scorpio word, right? Antiscorbutic. It's like against Scorpio. So that is the word that means anti-scurvy. And so total. I don't even want to get started on vitamin C or even the Scorpio. That word relates to Scorpio, but I really like. I think a better way of describing how pine needles are improving of the vitality of the body or of the antioxidant quality of the body, rather than saying vitamin C, is just to say it's anti-scorbutic quality. There's pine nuts. There's the basil genovese, the classic basil pesto, that has pine nuts. You can also find it with walnuts as well, but pine nuts are one of our favorites in our house. And that word reminds me of pine knots, like knotty pine, like the knot that you might find in a board of pine. And there's folklore about how in the forest, that's where like elementals can come in and out of, this realm and turn into fairies and turn into large people and then shrink back down and go into the pine knots. And so if you have knotty pine in your furniture and stuff like that, it can also be an invitation to the elementals to come in and out. I like that. Pine needles, pine needle cough syrup, pine resin cough syrup. There's so much pine medicine. One of my favorite things in the whole world is pine resin and just putting it into some hot oil and making a salve with it, or making a tincture with it with really high proof alcohol. Pine is such a treasure chest. That's actually what I call my salve, my pine salve. I call it treasure chest because it's really good for the breaking up the mucus. I whenever my little kids get like something going on with their lungs, we just bust out the treasure chest and they're back to good. Remember how I said Vicks Vapor Rub can use turpentine? Okay, here all the conifers are pretty much interchangeable as far as their medicine goes. But you got to know this one. You got to know this one because it's the toxic one. So all of them you can use except for this one. And that one is called yew, Y-E-W, yew. And the botanical genus is Taxus, T-A-X-U-S. That word sounds toxic, right? Taxus. And that's because the word toxic comes from the word taxus. It's the same word, T-O-X-I-C-T-A-X-U-S. It's pretty much the same word. C's and S's are interchangeable. Vowels are flowels. Okay, the yew is a very, very special and sacred tree. It's a tree of immortality, and it has this really cool way of, as it gets, people like, there's some yews that are thousands of years old and they don't even know how old they are, because as it gets older, it's the center of the trunk starts to just hollow out. And so it has this really unique feature where it can be like hollow on the inside and still be alive. And there's a rune that is matched with the yew, and that is called Iwaz. And this is a really cool rune here. Let's see what this rune is all about. Okay. It says, Iwaz, meaning yew tree. And I'm going to move my, symbolizing the cycles of death, rebirth, transformation, endurance, protection, connection to the world tree, the Yggdrasil. The Yggdrasil sometimes is also called the evergreen ash. So it's been there's like some scholarly consideration that it's actually the yew tree because it's the evergreen. And you could see the connection to the world tree or to the center, because I think of this as like a really cool signature because of the way that it hollows out. You know, the center is still, it's hollow. It's not moving. And in Norse tradition, representing deep, necessary life changes and spiritual initiation through hardship, often associated with high Heimdall and Odin's journey. Okay. Let's see the yew tree, if we can show you what it kind of looks like. They have these red berries. The deer love to eat it. Just because the deer eat it doesn't mean. So if you see it, this is kind of like the ornamental evergreen. If you could just think of like the evergreens that like you could change into, squares or circles, or like the Edward Scissorhand ones where you could turn them into like dinosaurs or whatever. That is the yew tree. And they're scary looking too. They kind of look scary when they're old. Look at this one. They plant them in cemeteries. These are some of the most magical ones. It's the ones that are in the graveyards. Okay, I agree to your stupid website. Look at that hollow tree. Ooh, ancient yews. Cool. So look at that. It's like hollow around. There's like a door, some sort of portal to hell, probably. I don't know. Don't eat those ones. Really cool tree, though, to learn about and to meditate on, especially like as far as magic goes, too. Scorpionic type of magic, right? Now, there's the holly. I think I want to wrap it up with holly here. So holly is the ilex genus, and there's a type of holly tree that a lot of people are consuming, and that is yerba mate. Yerba mate is a type of holly. So that one's from South America, and it is caffeinated. And then there's another one that's a cousin that's from North America that's caffeinated, that's called Ilex vomitoria. And I don't know much about this. One of my friends, Ash Ritter, did a really cool project on this one, and I'm really interested in talking to her about that. But that is the one that grows around Florida, Alabama, places like that the natives would call Yopon holly. Yopon holly. And that is what has become the fabled black drink, which may have inspired Coca-Cola. And to the settlers that came around, I think that they're drinking it and they're throwing it up, or maybe the settlers were throwing it up. That's why they called it the vomiting holly, the Ilex vomitoria. And but there is something about that particular one that has some more sacred indigenous rites that I don't know much about, but I do know a little bit more about the European holly. In Italian, the European holly is called pungi topo, which means mouse poker. And the reason why is because it's like a hedgerow, and you use it as a hedgerow to keep away the hedgehogs and the mice. And the way that the holly is shaped, it's shaped with those little spikes all around it. And actually, the animal totem for that is the bat. It looks like a bat wing. Yeah, this came up in a tuning recently. So there's a client. This has happened a lot with clients. Is that one thing that I've seen a lot of things in common is that behind the heart, in the back of the heart area, is where we, especially towards the left side, is where the biofield is most vulnerable to the perception of the influence of outside attack or the negativity of others. It's like the place that we can't really defend ourselves the best is right in the back of the heart. And so there's some disturbance in the back of the heart in this particular spot of this person. And so when I'm tuning it up, holly drops in, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, this makes sense here. The holly is bat medicine. It's the way that I was feeling it in the tuning was like there's an irrational fear, there's an irrational hatred. It just feels like something else really hated and wanted to hurt this person. Or let me put it this way. That was the perception that I was feeling in the field. Now, was it that was the case and really there was something, outside of this person, or was that the case that was internalized in the field? I don't think it really matters. I don't think it's relevant, because that's what was being reflected in the field. And so that's what we had to work through and turn off. And it was from about 2021, which kind of reminds me of when I learned about holly medicine as bat medicine. And this was an excellent class that Matthew Wood and another herbalist named Amanda Nicole talked about. And in it, they were talking about so-called variants and Delta and Omicron and things like that, things that I don't pay much attention to. But I was interested in the way that they were describing what they were feeling, or the phenomenology of the entity, which was moving through the collective. And that was the feeling of hatred. And so bats were instrumental in bringing up this narrative of COVID and everything like that, right? It's bad at a wet market. And how do bats hunt? They hunt at night. They're kind of like erratic and all over the place. And they're kind of scary. And so as I was tuning through this area, I'm just like really holding on there, describing what holly can do and how it's working. And I got done talking about it, and she said, I just was waiting for you to get done talking. But it was at that time that I would wake up in the middle of the night, every night, and I felt like this crazy fear, and I would like be gasping for breath. And the only thing that would bring me relief is having my husband put his hand over the back of my heart. It's like protecting it, right? Putting his hand over the back of the spot. And so holly, and I mean, when I'm saying holly, some people think like, okay, what's the dosage? What do you do? And that's not how I'm working here. I'm calling in the spirit of the plant. And so in her case, lives in an area where holly is accessible. It's like, go get some holly. Be with it. Draw it. Just draw it on a piece of paper. I think that works just as good. We're talking about like interacting with it in the causal and astral and physical, okay, and how that subtle can inform the gross. So the resonance that the plant has to the bat wing, and the resonance that the bat has to irrational fear and darkness and being attacked and like ultrasonication and not knowing which direction or where it's coming from, it just lined up perfectly as the perfect remedy. And there was some other synchronicities that I don't really feel like getting into, but it was like, it was just awesome. So it was a total slam dunk. Okay, so the Holly King, every year it's the solstice, and so every year there's the Holly King throwing down with the Oak King, and it's at the solstice that there's like this new king. This is where the Holly King gets dethroned, or the Oak King is born. So the Oak King is, because it's I should say less evergreen. It's more deciduous, especially in the northern part of the northern hemisphere, where it's losing its leaves. It's emblematic of the summer solstice and of youth and the summer. So maybe it's the winter solstice that the Oak King is born. Some people say it's the winter solstice that the Oak King takes over the Holly King. That doesn't make sense to me. I think of the Holly King, and the Holly King is the old beard. It's the tyrant of the winter. It's synonymous with winter, Father Winter, Saturn, Kronos. And it's just this dual nature green man archetype that just keeps cycling and cycling. And there's supposed to be, a fight between them. But I think of, it's the winter solstice, and now, tomorrow it's going to start becoming closer and closer and closer to the summer solstice again. But it's still the time of the Holly King, still here. And so hasn't been dethroned. In fact, I think of that maybe like in the quarter parts of the circle is where that's where the real tension between the Holly King and the Oak King are. So we see that in British culture. Let's see here. What do I have in my notes here? You know what? Holly is, speaking of that, holly in magic is used to repel lightning. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense to me in terms of the WrestleMania between the Oak King and the Holly King, because there is nothing that gets struck by lightning more than the oak tree. That's why it's sacred to Zeus and Jupiter and Thor. The oak tree is, and it's almost like that power of being overthrown, and the Kronos, old man, Saturnian, Capricornian, Holly, winter god is like prone. It's like immune to the lightning. It's really cool. So that's one of the things that like people would, keep holly close to their barn or to their house so that it wouldn't get the holly trees, so it wouldn't get struck by lightning. And the wood of the wands of holly are magic. They're used for influence. And it was said that this was first discovered by the cattle drivers, that the cattle drivers would not even need to touch their cattle with a piece of anything, that they would just have to point their wand in the direction of where they want their cows to go, or they would just have to put it down on the ground and the cows would come back to their wand. And of course, the wand of the holly is the Hollywood. So the Hollywood had the influence over the cattle, over the herd, and it still does today. Isn't that interesting? And just in a different way. That's why I'm telling you, I'm more interested in the symbolic than the actual medicine. Than the actual physical things itself, because they just kind of turn over. I didn't mention this in the bat medicine, but the flower essence for holly. I find Dr. Bach's website to be so good. Let's just go to Bach flower essence, holly. See what he says. When I was growing up, my favorite artist was Buddy Holly. Okay. So let's see here. It says, I don't think this is Bach's website, but it says, it's the Bach Center. Holly. It's often thought as the remedy for anger, but this isn't necessarily the case. In the Bach system, anger is a secondary emotion, and we need to look more closely at the cause. Anger based on impatience needs another remedy. For example, as do those angers based on feelings of personal unfairness and personal injustice, where there is a simple loss of control. Holly is actually the remedy for very negative, aggressive feelings directed at, and I would also say projected from others, feelings such as hatred, suspicion, envy, spite. So we could see how, from a biofield standpoint, like, is it actually others, directed energy coming our way, or is it protection from the perception of that, which actually creates that in the first place? And so either way, it just breaks the spell. So I love that. What else can I say about holly? Holly is toxic. The berries are toxic, so don't ingest the berries or the flowers. But people have made the tea, obviously, because the European holly is different than yerba mate, but you can make a tea of the leaf. And there's like affliction called chilblains, which is where you get like rheumatic peeling on the knuckles and things like that. And one of the cures for that is to wrap yourself with holly. And you could just see how it's much like the flogging with nettles or the urtication, where it just like brings blood to the surface. And how holly, again, associated with Mars, with its red, super red berries and its weaponous type leaves. Even the word yopon reminds me of the word weapon. It also reminds me of the word Japan, yopon. But that's it. I think I want to wrap it up here. I wanted to wrap it up with holly. I guess we could talk about fir. When I said fir tree before, and I was talking to my son, who's almost 4 now, he was like thinking about like dog fir, like hairy trees, and I was talking FIR, and I said a joke. I said, no, if I was talking about a furry tree, I'd be talking about shagbark hickory. And he just started laughing and laughing, and it wasn't because I think he got the joke, and I don't know if you get the joke either. It's a really lame joke, but it was because of the way I said it. I was like, no, I think if you're thinking about a fir tree, you should be thinking about shagbark hickory. And if you just, if you just deliver a line like that to a little boy, he's just going to laugh and laugh. And so it reminds me of one of the things. It's like last week, it was like the coldest days of the year so far. Oh boy, it was so cold. And we were inside and so we were like doing something. And it was just me and the boys. And we were like, let's learn about knock knock jokes. And so that was our fun thing for the night. We just like made a whole bunch of knock knock jokes. And they were all kind of, for him, the jokes were always, here, I'll give you an example. They all follow this pattern. Knock, knock. Who's there? Silly. Silly who? Silly goose, let me in because it's so cold outside. And so whatever it was always let me in because it's so cold outside. Except instead of saying because it's so cold outside, he says because. It was silly goose, let me in because it's so cold outside. That's how he says because. And it's even funnier. But I had thought of one. Okay. And so I was going through this book called Mythic Plants, and I was just looking at the titles, and I was just coming up with knock knock joke puns based on the titles, and I thought they were funny, but I don't think he got the puns. But it's all about the delivery, so I'm gonna give you a couple of them just to close out here with our Evergreen show. Okay. Knock knock. Who's there? Lotus. Lotus who? Lotus in because it's so cold outside. Knock knock. Who's there? Figs. Figs who? Figs your doorbell because it's so cold outside. I'm tired of knocking. All right. Knock knock. Last one. Who's there? Olive. Olive who? I live here. Let me in because it's so cold outside. It's like a whole night of knock knock jokes like that with the boys. All right. So that's the year ahead that I'm looking forward to. And I'm hoping that you enjoyed this episode and learned a little bit more about evergreens. I think I could have did a little bit better talking about the medicinal aspects. But I think there's so much good information out there about the medicine, and it's kind of overplayed and boring. I'm more interested in the mythic medicine and the seasonal aspect of it. And I hope you are too. For more episodes, I'm going to read I'm going to read all the feedback. I'm going to read every comment. Just feel free to subscribe. It really does help give me motivation to continue to provide free content well after my bedtime. So if you find this entertaining, fun, useful, anything at all, please leave a 5-star review if you're listening. Give a thumbs up or something. Tell somebody about it. Tell me about it. I really appreciate you. Ciao for now, y'all. Thank you.